My name is Jolene Carter, 32, an architect who's been covering her parents' mortgage for the past 3 years. They were hosting their 30th wedding anniversary dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. I wasn't invited. Mom said it was because of limited space and they had to keep it intimate. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was too busy anyway. But when I opened social media that evening, the lie unraveled. Ava, my sister, had posted a photo, everyone smiling at a long table beneath golden lights, champagne glasses lifted. The caption read, "Family only. We finally have everyone together." I stared at the screen, the words stinging. Then I typed my comment. "Congrats, mortgage and taxes are all yours now." I hit send before I could change my mind. 5 minutes later, the post vanished. 10 more, and 30 missed calls flashed across my screen. I didn't answer. I just sat there in my tiny Albany apartment. The glow from my phone brightening the dark room, realizing maybe I'd been uninvited long before the dinner ever happened. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd excluded me. Asterisk, if you've ever been treated like a stranger by your own family. Keep watching. What happened next will make you rethink what love and loyalty truly mean. And when you finish this story, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Asterisk, it had always been this way. Ava was the sun, and I was the shadow trailing quietly behind. When we were kids, she'd draw crooked stick figures for Mother's Day, and Mom would frame them like artwork. I once brought home a blue ribbon from a state science fair, but it was tucked into a drawer before dinner. Mom said she didn't want me to boast. Even as a child, I learned that Ava's smallest effort was worth praise, while my best work was just expected. Asterisk, the pattern only deepened as we got older. When the family car broke down, I was the one who wired money from my first real job. When Dad's medical bills built up, I sent another check, pretending I didn't notice the silence that came instead of thanks. Every time there was a crisis, my phone would light up, not for conversation, but for a transaction. I told myself I was helping because it was the right thing to do, but part of me hoped they'd finally recognize my worth. They never did. Ava's life unraveled long before mine ever began to bloom. She married young, divorced young, and moved back home with boxers of clothes and a bruised ego. Mom welcomed her like a returning hero. I remember hearing her tell a neighbor, "Ava is doing her best, poor thing." When I visited that weekend, I offered to take Ava out for dinner, but she declined, saying she was too exhausted. That night, I overheard Mom telling Dad that I didn't understand real struggle. I wanted to laugh. Paying off their bills wasn't struggle enough. Apparently, living in Albany gave me distance, but it also became proof of my supposed coldness. Every time I missed a family dinner because of late meetings, Mom would sigh and tell relatives, "Jolene is too busy for family." Asterisk, I worked hard, earned every promotion, yet in their eyes, I was the daughter who drifted away. The truth was simpler, being near them hurt. The closer I stood, the more invisible I felt. Dad, Robert, was a quiet man. He rarely disagreed with Mom. When she criticized me, he'd mutter, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused everything. Once, after a tense dinner, I asked him why he never spoke up. He looked down at his plate and said, "Keeping peace is easier than being right." I realized then that silence was his version of loyalty to her, not to me. The years passed, marked by phone calls that always began with small talk and ended with requests. "Can you help with the roof here? Your sister needs a little extra cash there." I gave, not because I was selfless, but because I couldn't bear the guilt of saying no. It wasn't until recently that I noticed the pattern. They only called when something was broken. When everything was fine, I vanished from their world completely. Asterisk, sometimes. Late at night, I'd scroll through old family photos on my phone. Ava's arm always around Mom, Dad always standing beside them, and me just off to the side, smiling half-cropped out of the frame. It wasn't intentional, I told myself, but deep down I knew it reflected real life. There was no cruelty, only habit. I had become background, the dependable one, the invisible one. Asterisk, people say family is unconditional. Mine came with terms, interest rates, and unspoken debts. I was the safety net beneath their lives, stretched thin but never acknowledged. For a long time, I convinced myself that love meant sacrifice. Only now, I'm starting to wonder if it was simply convenience for them. 1 week before the party, Mom called. Her voice was gentle in that overly careful way that always meant something unpleasant was coming. She said she hoped I was doing well, that work must be keeping me busy, and that she and Dad were finalizing the seating chart for their anniversary dinner. I could already hear the hesitation building before she said it. There were only so many seats at the restaurant, she explained. and things had gotten complicated with cousins and old friends confirming at the last minute. She said she hoped I'd understand that it wasn't personal, that she loved me very much. I sat at my desk listening to her voice echo through the speakerphone, half distracted by the hum of my computer. The words didn't sting right away. They just lingered there, heavy, waiting for meaning to settle in. I told her it was fine, that she should enjoy the evening. She sounded relieved, almost cheerful, when she said goodbye. An hour later, a message from Ava lit up my phone. "Don't take it personally," she wrote, followed by a smiling emoji. I stared at it longer than I should have. Ava always had a way of turning sympathy into superiority. The text wasn't comfort. It was confirmation that I'd been excluded, and she knew it. I typed a reply and deleted it 3 times before finally leaving it empty. That evening at the office. Na noticed my silence. She was the kind of coworker who never asked unnecessary questions but always knew when something felt off. We'd shared the same cubicle row for 2 years, and in that time, she'd learned how to read my moods. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee before heading home. I agreed, mostly to avoid thinking. At the cafe near the corner. She waited until I spoke first. I told her about Mom's call, about the limited seating, about Ava's message. Na stirred her drink slowly, her eyes calm but sharp. "They only love the version of you that pays the bills," she said finally. The sentence landed like a pin drop in the quiet air. I almost laughed because it sounded cruel but also because it was true. Na didn't say it to be harsh. She said it because she saw what I refused to admit. I told her I'd always been the one who sent money whenever something went wrong. That my parents called only when there was a problem to fix. She nodded, as if she'd already known. "Then stop fixing everything," she said. I wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that families don't just break cleanly. But the truth was, I didn't know how to stop. When we left the cafe, the air outside felt colder than it should have. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, and for a moment, I imagined Mom and Ava sitting together somewhere warm, deciding where to place everyone for the dinner. I wondered if there had ever been a time when my presence felt necessary instead of inconvenient. That night, I went online and ordered a gift for them. It wasn't expensive, just a small silver photo frame engraved with 30 years of love. I thought it might bridge the distance, even a little. I wrapped it carefully, wrote a short card that said, "Congratulations, wishing you both many more happy years." The next morning, I mailed it to their address and went on with my day. 3 days later, a box appeared on my doorstep. The return label was in Mom's handwriting. Inside was the same photo frame, untouched, with a note that said, "We already have too much." I stood there in the hallway holding the box, unsure whether to feel angry or embarrassed. The words were polite, but the message was clear. My efforts were unnecessary, just like my presence at their party. That evening, Ava called, her voice bright with the kind of false concern that always made my stomach tighten. She said Mom hadn't meant to hurt my feelings, that it was just a misunderstanding, and that I should try not to be sensitive. I told her I wasn't upset, though my throat felt tight. Before hanging up, she said, "You know how Mom gets when she's planning something big." I knew exactly how Mom got, but what hurt more was realizing Ava always defended her, even when she knew it was wrong. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the snow begin to fall. The city was quiet, and my reflection looked tired. I thought about what Na had said, that maybe they only loved the version of me that provided, stayed silent, and didn't ask for space at the table. For the first time, I wondered if love built on obligation was love at all. I didn't cry, I just felt a strange calm, the kind that comes after giving up on expecting more. I unplugged my phone and went to bed early, deciding there was nothing left to say. The next week would come, the dinner would happen, and I would not be part of it. What surprised me most was how little that thought hurt anymore. Saturday night. My feed froze on a single post. I had just finished cleaning my apartment, trying to distract myself from the thought of the anniversary dinner happening across town. I wasn't expecting anything yet. The moment I opened the app, there it was, Ava's update, sitting at the top of my screen as if waiting for me. The picture loaded slowly. Pixel by pixel, before it revealed everyone standing together in front of the restaurant. They were dressed in coordinated white outfits, smiling as if the night were a perfect portrait of love and harmony. At the center stood Mom and Dad, their hands intertwined, surrounded by relatives, friends, and even neighbors I barely recognized. Ava's caption appeared. "Couldn't be prouder." Her words sat there like a stamp of approval on my exclusion. Dozens of heart emojis followed from family friends. Messages praising how beautiful everyone looked, how strong and close the Carters were. Each comment was another quiet cut. I read the caption again and again, as if repetition would change its meaning. It didn't. The more I stared, the colder I felt. The white clothes, the glowing smiles, the polished setting, they weren't just for celebration. They were for performance. My family didn't want honesty. They wanted image. They wanted to look united, even if unity meant pretending I didn't exist. Asterisk, my eyes blurred slightly, but I refused to cry. Instead, I scrolled back up, pressed the comment box, and typed what came naturally. Congrats. Mortgage and taxes are all yours now. It wasn't loud. It wasn't vulgar, but it was true. For 3 years, I had been the one making sure that house existed. Every check, every transfer, every quiet sacrifice came from me. That photo wouldn't even be possible without those payments. I hit post and watched the words settle beneath Ava's perfect caption. Then I locked my phone and set it aside. Asterisk, 15 minutes passed before I picked it up again. The post was gone. My notification bar blinked nonstop with messages and missed calls. The numbers climbed fast. 10, 20, 30. Mom's name appeared the most. I didn't answer. I just sat there staring at the phone, vibrating on the table, feeling the weight of every buzz. When it finally stopped, a message came through. How could you embarrass us like that? You're being selfish. I put the phone face down and leaned back, letting the silence settle. The word selfish repeated in my head until it almost lost meaning. I had been called many things in my life: cold, distant, too focused, but selfish was a new invention. My chest tightened. Not from guilt, but from disbelief. After everything I had done, after every bill I had covered, every late payment I'd fixed, they still managed to paint me as the villain. Asterisk, I stood by the window, looking out at the street below. The snow had started again, quiet and persistent. Somewhere across town, they were probably still laughing, maybe already home from the dinner, full and satisfied. I imagined Mom recounting the moment I commented, Ava defending her post, Dad saying nothing at all. That last part at least I could be sure of. I made tea just to have something to do with my hands. The kettle hissed, filling the small apartment with steam. Asterisk, I thought about the past 3 years, every time I logged into my bank account to transfer the mortgage payment, telling myself it was temporary, that one day things would be different. I never questioned why I was doing it. Family needed help, and that was what good daughters did. I didn't even put my name on the deed. I told myself I didn't need credit. Asterisk, standing there, it hit me all at once. I wasn't just excluded from their table, I had been excluded from their gratitude long ago. They didn't see me as a person anymore, just a resource. And that post, that perfect photo, was proof. They could erase me from their picture, but not from the bills that kept their lives stable. Asterisk, the phone rang again. I let it ring. I knew if I picked up, Mom would speak first, her tone dripping with disappointment instead of remorse. She would tell me that families shouldn't air dirty laundry online, that appearances mattered more than feelings, and she would never realize the irony that I had been keeping their appearances intact for years. Eventually, the call stopped. The apartment grew quiet again, except for the low hum of the heater. I sat on the couch, tea cooling in my hand, and thought of Na's voice in the cafe. They only love the version of you that pays the bills. It wasn't just a clever observation, it was prophecy. I took one last look at my phone before turning it off completely. The light faded from the screen, and for the first time that night, the quiet felt peaceful. Somewhere deep inside, under the hurt, something shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was awakening. I didn't know yet. All I knew was that I was done being the invisible sponsor of their perfect image. Asterisk, 2 weeks passed. And silence got expensive. I had stopped sending the mortgage payments the same day I decided to stop explaining myself. For 3 years, my account had released the same amount every month like clockwork, without thanks or acknowledgement. The moment I cut that flow, the quiet that followed was heavier than I imagined. The first week was still, the second began to hum with consequence. Asterisk, on Tuesday morning, my phone lit up with a message from Mom. The bank keeps calling. They said something about missed payments. Is everything all right? It was written with feigned confusion, the kind that hides accusation beneath politeness. I read it twice and didn't answer. A few hours later, she sent another. We didn't want to bother you, but they say it's urgent. The word urgent was her favorite way to manipulate guilt. I could almost hear her sigh between the lines, the practiced tone of a mother who believed love meant control. Asterisk, by Friday. Ava joined in. Her post appeared on social media, public for everyone to see. Some people forget who raised them. It read, paired with a photo of her holding mom's hand. The comments were predictable. Sympathy, validation, concern. Stay strong, someone wrote, family can hurt the most. Another said. Ava replied to each one with heart emojis and crying faces. Playing the role she had perfected: devoted daughter, loyal sister, victim of someone else's coldness. I scrolled through the thread once, closed the app, and let my phone fall onto the couch. I refused to give them the satisfaction of a response. But ignoring them didn't stop reality from catching up. 3 days later, an envelope from the bank arrived in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't lived in that house for years, and all financial ties were supposed to be clean except for the payments I chose to send. The envelope felt heavy, its paper thick and official. I tore it open and scanned the first page. My name was printed in bold letters across the top. Jolene Carter, borrower and guarantor. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The letter wasn't about late payments. It was about a new refinance. The numbers were unfamiliar, larger, riskier. The house had been refinanced under my name 2 months earlier. I reread the page, searching for an error, a misprint, anything. But every signature line, every identifier was mine. The next morning, I called the bank. After being transferred through 3 departments, a calm voice introduced himself as Ethan Davis, the account manager. Miss Carter, he said, I see your inquiry regarding the refinance. How can I assist? I asked him to verify the details. He hesitated, then said, the refinance was processed in July. The primary borrowers listed are Robert and Evelyn Carter, with your signature authorizing the guarantee. My pulse quickened. I never signed anything, I said. Can you send me the documents? There was a pause before he answered. We have electronic copies on file. The signature matches prior authorizations. It appears consistent. The word consistent struck like a blade. Someone had used my digital signature. My saved authorization data from prior transactions. I pressed further, asking for timestamps, IP addresses, confirmation of the signing method. Ethan grew cautious. Legally, I can provide that through a formal request. But if you're suggesting fraud, we can initiate an internal review. The room seemed smaller as he spoke. The air felt sharp. I thanked him, wrote down his name, and ended the call. Then, I sat still, staring at the bank statement spread across my desk. My parents hadn't just leaned on my help, they had crossed into theft, using the very trust I had built with them as a weapon. The messages from Mom continued. Honey, we need to talk. Then you're being unreasonable. Finally, you're tearing this family apart. I didn't respond to any. Each message was proof that their love had conditions attached. It was never about care, only compliance. That night, I found myself scrolling through old emails. There it was, an automated message from the bank, 2 months old, labeled refinance confirmation. I had ignored it back then, assuming it was spam. The attached PDF now told the full story. The form was digitally signed under my name. Using the email and access credentials tied to the joint account I had once shared with Dad for payment transfers, I had left that access open, trusting they wouldn't misuse it. That trust had become their entry point. I printed every document, highlighted every date, every code, every name. The paper stack grew thick, each page proof of betrayal. When I reached the final one, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. There was no misunderstanding left to fix. They hadn't stumbled into this mistake. They had planned it. The refinance required 2 verifications, both cleared within 10 minutes of each other. Someone in that house knew exactly what they were doing. Later. As I stared out at the snow-covered street, I realized how quiet betrayal sounds when it stops being emotional and starts becoming evidence. For years, I had been their safety net. Now, I was their collateral. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began drafting an email, not to my mother, not to Ava, but to Ethan Davis.